You're right, everyone. So I'm going to talk about Payday 3 and why it's kind of a disappointment. So let's get started. To get a proper idea of why Payday 3 is so disappointing, I wanted to first talk about Payday 2 and what made that so great. Now, Payday 2 was released all the way back in 2013 and apparently wasn't very good when it first came out. Now, I wasn't playing it back then, but that's just from what I've heard. But now, through multiple years of patches, updates and a lot of DLC, it's become, at least what I'd consider, as one of, if not the best, heist games ever. I think the main reason for this is because Payday 2 has so much to offer. Like, it has a ton of heists, ton of customization, guns, melee weapons, tools, skills and perks and so on that suit any playstyle you can think of. This is fantastic because it means whatever you find fun, be it playing cautiously or aggressively or whatever, there's something for you here. This is also supported by the core systems, which I'll talk about in more detail later. Anyway, now I've talked about why Payday 2 is so fantastic, let's talk about why Payday 3 fails to live up to it. Let's start with the big one, the armour system, and this is one of the core systems I just mentioned. In Payday 2, when you got damaged, your armour would regen after a certain period of time depending on what armour you had. Also, as long as you had any armour, any standard damage wouldn't do anything to your health. This has been completely removed in Payday 3. Now once your armour is gone, it's gone. And the only way to restore it is using armour bags, which you can bring into each heist as a tool. This is stupid for a couple of reasons. Number one, because armour is so valuable, chances are the armour kit's the only tool you're going to ever bring in. So it stops you from using any other ones. Not like there are many other ones to use anyway, because Payday 3's got far less tools than in Payday 2. Number two, it forces you into a very passive playstyle. You have to hide. There's no being aggressive, because once you run out of armour, and you run out of armour kits, you're essentially dead. You're waiting to die. So, gone was the freedom that was in Payday 2. Now you have to play how they want you to. This is one of the biggest problems with Payday 3 as a whole. This lack of freedom and inability to play how you want really hinders the game. Next up, the levelling system. And this is also one of the main problems with Payday 3, for a very similar reason to the armour. In Payday 2 it was very simple. You got XP for finishing heists. Not only that, but to ensure that you didn't get bored grinding the same heist and actually play different ones, if you play the same heist too many times, you'd actually start earning less and less XP from it. Similarly, if you haven't played a heist in a while, you'd get more XP for doing it. This isn't the case in Payday 3. While you still earn weapon and skill XP for completing heists, you don't earn any level XP. The only way to get that is by completing challenges. This is stupid for the same reason as the armour. It takes away the freedom and forces you into playing in a very specific way. So, if you want to level up, which of course you do, to unlock new weapons, you have to play how the developers want you to, not how you want to. Next I'll talk about the weapons, and simply there's just less of them. With the guns in Payday 3, there's not only a lot less of them, but they're also a lot less weird and wonderful as they were in Payday 2. They're all very generic and standard. I will say that I do like the customization of the guns, like changing the barrel and the magazine and whatnot. But I do wish they'd have kept it as numbers to represent like the damage and the recoil, etc., instead of the bars, though that is more of a preference. There are far fewer throwables in Payday 3 as well, and, most of all, there's no melee weapons at all. Your only option for melee is hitting with a butt of your gun, which doesn't even do any damage, and solely exists to get civilians on the floor, so you can tie them up. So now there's no way to kill anyone with a melee, which is also a bit stupid. Speaking of things that are fewer in Payday 3, there's also far less heists, which caused the game to get a lot more boring, a lot more quickly, and also quite repetitive, just because there's far less to do. Next up, the matchmaking. In Payday 2, there was options for both online and offline, and me personally, I played the offline a lot, and it was perfectly fine. Payday 3, however, is always online. Now this has been done by many games in the past, and every single time it's been met with pushback from their respective communities. So why they thought it was a good idea to put it into Payday 3, I'll never know. Now this is also stupid for a few reasons. Number one, people who don't have very good internet, they're going to struggle, especially. If people's internet is prone to dropping out, they can be completely kicked out of their solo heist because it's always online, and they need an online connection to be able to play. Number two, this results in potentially long matchmaking for games when you're on your own, when you're not even trying to find other players to play with. Number three, which is more of just an annoyance than anything, you can't pause, like I said, even in games where you're on your own. It's just more irritating than anything. Next up, the asset system. And whilst this isn't as big of a deal as other things, it shows just how little foresight they had when making some decisions. In Payday 2, just before starting the heist, there was an asset menu. Now for every heist, there was a guaranteed med bag and ammo bag to buy. And the stealth ones, there was a body bag case. And also, some heists had their own unique assets to go along with them. In Payday 3, it's completely different. Now, there's only one asset per person. So if you like me and tend to play on your own, you can only bring one asset into each heist. There is also now not a menu before each heist where you can buy assets. You have to pre-buy assets in the store, which is, again, more of an annoyance than anything, because if you're anything like me, you'll forget and then never have any assets to use. Worst of all, they've removed the custom heist assets, so gone into the uniqueness that the assets brought. Now there is no unique assets for any heist, it's just the basic ones. To conclude the negatives, I'll just quick fire a couple things which I think are still worth being mentioned but shouldn't really be focused on as much. Number one, there's less masks to choose from, so a lot less customization. And also, most masks come completely grey now, and you sort out the pattern and colour scheme yourself, which can be good or bad depending on who you ask. Number two, there's no safe house anymore, which whilst it didn't really do much in Payday 2, it was nice to visit every once in a while and see your hard work represented in the vault. Number three, there's no real endgame anymore. You don't have all those infamy levels that kept you playing for ages, like in Payday 2. Once you've got to a high enough level to unlock everything you want to, there's nothing that really keeps you playing, nothing keeps you coming back. Number four, you get far less money from heists now, which gameplay wise don't really make a difference because everything's been made cheaper. But it does make the heist feel more insignificant and more meaningless. Because now instead of robbing banks for like millions, you're robbing it for a couple $100 grand. Number five, they've removed the AI commands now, at least as far as I know, because I can't find them. So now you can no longer command your AI teammates to go to somewhere or wait and guard something, which I don't really see why they've removed because they were quite useful. Number six, the enemies are a lot more spongy now than in Payday 2, which can be good or bad depending on who you ask. But the health also no longer scales with difficulty. So whether you're playing on normal or overkill difficulty, the enemies, at least in regards to the health, will be the exact same. And number seven, there's no incentive to go above and beyond anymore. In Payday 2, it was typically worth going out of your way to try and get as many bags as you possibly could. But in Payday 3, because you don't get XP for completing the heist anymore, and because you also get far less money, there's not really any point. Because it's more just a waste of time than anything. You might as well just finish the heist with the minimum bags possible. It's not all bad though, believe it or not. so I'll quickly run through a list of some things that I do think are good, that have been improved. Number one, there is a lot more customization now. Like the masks, for example, whilst there are fewer masks, the ability to change the colour to whatever you want and the design, in particular, to whatever you want, is quite nice. And you can also change the look of your guns and your suit, which is, again, a nice touch. Number two, the graphics and gunplay are fantastic, and undoubtedly a massive improvement over Payday 2. Just take the gameplay in the background, for example. Everything feels more weighty and just looks far better. Number three, it's only a small thing, but now when there's a break in the phase of the cops attacking you, it is an actual break. The cops actually go away and leave you on your own, which I do prefer. Number four, speaking of the cops, they are far more intimidating now, and they are a lot more of a threat than they were in Payday 2, especially the bulldozers. In Payday 2, you kinda just walked all over them, at least in the lower difficulties, but now they're a genuine threat now, even in that normal difficulty, and you need to keep your eye on them. And number five, the stealth has been completely overhauled and expanded upon massively. It's now far more complex, far more enjoyable for it. Now, I know I have a lot to say there, and I know most of it were negative, but that's not to say I think the game's awful, because at the end of the day, it's still enjoyable. It's just more disappointing, because after Payday 2 was so incredible, it's just a shame to see that Payday 3 doesn't live up to it. There is hope though, because if it's anything like Payday 2, it'll be getting consistent patches and updates and DLC, at least for the foreseeable future. Will hopefully bring it up to the standard that Payday 2 set. It's clear this has also started as well, because if you've been looking carefully at the background gameplay, you'll notice that they've added new animations for a lot of things, which look far better. So I hope they keep going with it, and they keep updating it, and with a bit of effort, it'll be a fantastic game. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.